No problem at all. Good morning, Ron. How are you?
Just excellent. Thank you. How are you?
Fabulous. Fabulous. Andy's joining us as well, I see. Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Just a reminder, folks, if your video's not on, you're not here.
We are keeping track and keeping credit. The boards do task us with, making sure and validating that we're not trying to, manipulate the system or whatever it might be. So nonetheless, I did want to talk about time clauses this morning. We're starting to see a few of them given the activity in the market, and in particular because we as Remax generation, we straddle a couple of different board areas. I'll premise that by saying I've reached out to both the VIREV and VREV boards to come up or strike some sort of task force to come to terms on how we can align the board specific time clauses that have been provided. I know we've talked about them a little bit in the past, and they're both different than the standard subject to sale time clause that you are all provided with uniformly inside web forms. But for now, this is what we have. And I think because we do straddle two board areas, and we do cross over, and we do work with agents on both sides of the imaginary line at the top of the Malahat. Something really important to be aware of and just understand so that we know what we're looking at every time we get our hands on one of these, because I think we'll see a few of them. Anything to add to that? Do you want to, let's start off a little bit. Jenny, how's your week been? Let's do a little quick round table here and check in.
It's good. I have 3 buyers I've been running around for the past month with. So I actually asked Jen Pike, I'm like, is this normal? Like, I think one of them I've actually looked at 44 houses so far.
Yeah.
I know. So I'm like, yeah, tomorrow I'm going out to like a 20-acre property, gumboots, trekking, like they've got me going. But you know what? I'm learning a lot, and I'm seeing a lot of inventory. So it's good, right? And they're good people. So, but
Yeah.
I've never showed so many houses.
So are they hesitant? Like, is there a certain trigger that they're looking for? Are they just looky-loos, or?
So one of them is from Victoria. They're looking either for a lot to build or a fix-me-upper in Lake Cowichan. So
Okay.
I'm basically on every morning looking for anything new coming on, learning a lot about lots, which has been great. And then my other one, they live in Port Alberni. They just got pre-approved, but they will be subject to sale of their home.
Okay.
So I'm just getting them ready. Like, you need to get your home ready, because when you put an offer in. Now I was talking to Ali. So when they put an offer in, what's like the right time? We're just talking about time clauses. So they have to be ready to have their house listed within like 3 to 5 days. Is that how it works, or what do you think?
Well, so potentially, if they're putting an offer in that's subject to the sale of, the first question the seller is going to ask is your house for sale?
Yeah.
And then if it's not, they're going to ask, what are you listing it for? They're going to want to know all the details. You're best off to have that house on the market before you make an offer.
That's what I said to them.
Yeah.
You're best off to have it sold before you make an offer.
That's what I said. I did. I said that too.
Fair point.
I've established quite a relationship with these guys. They're lovely. They're an older couple. And so they want to buy down in this area. So we're looking Duncan, Lake Cowichan, Lady Smith, Chemainus area, a little bit of North Nanaimo, Cedar. So they're looking at like something with property, a little bit of privacy. But then of course they like the suburbia, beautiful, nice houses, but they don't like how close they are together. Right.
Yeah.
So we've kind of narrowed it down now, which is good. So that's them. And then
are there homes available and turning over that check their boxes?
Yeah, there is. And so they're seeing
they
that
absolutely should sell first.
And that's what exactly. So, and that's what I said, because now they're seeing how fast things, like I update them from Touchbase. I'm like, hey, this is gone. this is gone. They're like, whoa. And I'm like, so this has been a little bit, last 5 days, they're starting to get it.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't want to show them 44 houses and have them make a subject to sale offer and just lose it on the second day to somebody that already sold their house.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what's the hesitation with getting their house on the market?
So husband is he's a millwright, so he collects many tools. So he's stressed out. He's working at it finally, cleaning out all of his tools in his shop area and stuff. Their house is pretty tickety boo, like they're pretty on it, but it's just the cluttering, decluttering and stuff. So that's that's the holdup there.
Okay, so I would definitely try to encourage them to get it listed, and if they get an offer on their place, they can always, you know, have that offer conditional upon them finding a place as well, right? Entering into an offer to purchase.
Yeah.
And
then I have another client. I took off Carol Workington's hands when she went away on holidays, and she's remarkable. Carol's worked with her for years, but she should do real estate. she's so on it. So every morning I wake up, before I even making my coffee, I'm on there looking at new stuff, shooting it at her. So she's sitting on the fence. We're just trying to find the right match for her. So I was out again last night till 7:30 with her. So yeah, it's just been busy. Buyers, it's great. It's nice.
Yeah.
I want to know more about the people that you've showed 40 something houses to.
Yeah.
So when you show them a property, you're getting a response, I presume, of what do they like, what do they not like. You are?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And that's why we've narrowed it down now. And the issue was the wife wants brand new, like suburbia looking home, 900,000 in our area. And then husband, he's a millwright, so he could fix things up, but they're older. So they've been torn between how much work do they want to put into the home and the property, because he's super handy, to her wanting something brand spanking new, but then it's not a lot, and there's not a size of a lot and a shop for him, right?
So you're showing them stuff that one of them doesn't like.
Exactly. So, what we've come down to now is the wife agrees that she doesn't need brand spanking new, but she needs something nice and clean and more West Coasty, modern. And husband agrees that he doesn't need as much property, but a lot that, as long as he can have a shop area.
Yeah.
And
So,
the people that will need to sell in Port Alberni?
Exactly. Yeah. So you think I should really push them? And I let it be for a while, but now it's getting to the point, like I said, the market's picked up. And then I was talking to Ali about, how many days do they have to have their house ready? So I just had the talk with them about that. Any suggestions of how I can get them more motivated to get it listed?
Yeah, their house should be ready yesterday.
Exactly.
I honestly, I'd have a hard time showing them another house without them getting their house on the market and getting an offer on it, because they're not even in a position to buy, and you're killing yourself trying to find them something, and they're not even cash buyers.
And that's exactly where I'm at right now. I'm feeling holy cow, I've never.
Have you had that conversation with them?
Not yet.
I'd love to, I'm happy to take you and show you around. I love working with you, but all of this stuff we're looking at, we're going to miss out on because you guys actually aren't ready. So let's spend your time and energy on getting ready and get your house to market.
And they're seeing how quickly places are turning over. I mean, you've got to convey to them with sincerity that they're absolutely they're educating themselves, but they're wasting their time. They're also wasting those sellers' time. So some people go to great lengths to accommodate a showing.
Yeah.
I think it's unfair to all these people that, they're looking at their houses, who are cleaning up and getting ready and getting out of their house to let them come in. And they're not even there with the check in hand.
Yeah.
So Ron, now saying that, so say they get it listed, this week, say they find a house, they put an offer on it. For the time clause, what would be suffice? 3 weeks to sell their house? What is in this market right now? What would you suggest?
Are you listing their house or are you referring them to an agent who's helping them with their house?
I was going to refer them to an agent in Port
So
Alberni.
I would not burn one more ounce of gas before they've met with an agent. They've got pricing that's real. Because right now they might think their place is worth 400 and it's worth 300. I'm sorry, I don't want to.
No, it's good. This is what I need.
Here, but this is a classic case of agents that spend a ton of time and never get paid.
Well, and that's what
At least you're educating yourself on the market. That's, you know, a positive. But you need to be asking people tough questions earlier in the process.
Okay.
You're not serving them, letting them have the delusion that they can just, you know, go and look at everything that comes on the market, and when the right one comes along that they can buy it. Because if a good one comes up, somebody else is going to think it's a good one too, and be in a position to write the check that they can't.
Yeah, and I'm going to explain that to them. I'm going with them tomorrow, so I'm going to sit down with them tomorrow and explain it that way, because it's black and white, and that's what I've been feeling like. You know, at least they're pre-approved and everything's done now, but I've been they're older, so I've been kind of holding their hand along, right? Got them in touch with the mortgage broker. And
I mean, if there isn't anything coming up that actually works for them, that's another issue. And it sounds like that might be more of the case than we've just discussed here. You've shown them 40 places and none of them work for them. You know, are there not, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 properties out there right now that they could buy and that work for them? Or have there not been some turnover in the past month? Then that's another matter. They're going to be, you know, shy about listing before they find something. And that makes it all that much more important that they've got their property ready, that they've got an agent ready to go, that they know the price that they're realistically going to be able to get in 10 days on the market. Or they're just going to go through the whole process, find a place to like, lose it, and be back to the drawing board.
And that's what I'm concerned about. And that's why I was going to talk to them about tomorrow, is because that's what my concern is. They're going to find something they like. And I think I just need to be a little bit more real with them about it.
You know what I mean? And let's be proactive here. Let's avoid disappointment.
I know.
Let's get to the next step. And the next step is let's get your house on the market and sold.
Yeah, I like that wording. And that's exactly it, because I like that. So that's a good way to explain it.
Yeah, because right now we're just walking down the road of disappointment because we can't do anything.
Yeah, definitely.
I characterize it and say that, you know, you're trying to buy in reverse. The reality is, let's paint the picture here. We find the place, you love it, it's priced well, it ticks all your boxes. How excited is this homeowner who's just listed their property? They've listed at a good price because they want to sell it quick, because they already found where they want to go. And you come along with an offer that says, we'll buy yours, as long as we can sell ours. And you haven't got it on the market yet. And then there's another person who's knocking on the door on your heels, who's like, hey, we like your house and we've already sold ours. How can they possibly compete with that? The other side of that is the cost factor from a negotiate. Let's say the people are open to their offer, that there isn't somebody else on their heels who's already sold. I would estimate just approximate numbers from my experience that people pay a premium of about 5% to buy a property that is subject to the sale, with an offer that is subject to sale. That a cash buyer has at least on average a 5% net advantage versus the one who's got that kind of a condition.
And you know what, I need to explain that to them, because I think that's where I'm at now, because I've been running crazy with them.
Enough market education, time to shit her off the pot.
Ron touched on it. The key is the hard questions, and it's time to make some decisions. We have to act, right?
Yeah. Well, and in the meantime of that too, his wife had surgery, and so they're still wanting to look at how. I said, you know what, you guys just need to take a break. Like, she needs to recover. Like, he's like willing to put her in the car. I'm like, hey, no, we just need to slow her down a bit here, because Yeah, it's been crazy. But yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I chimed in this morning because it's been on my mind trying to figure out how to explain it to them. And Ron, I like how you explained it because I just need to break it down for them to actually see the process, right?
Yeah, step by step.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you.
You bet. Natalia, how are you doing this morning?
Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm doing fantastic and yeah, doing well. Fantastic. We out of power. The Quebec had a severe ice storm. A lot of damages to home. 1.4 million people without any power. So I'm in the office. I have internet, but yesterday I had nothing, and this morning I had nothing. So. Yeah, but I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Awesome. Andy, anything you want to touch on real quick before we break into these clauses?
For me, I'm having difficulty trying to figure out what kind of a conversation to have with people who, are a couple of months out. I know it's important to stay in touch with people. I'm having two issues. I don't know where to put them in my CRM follow-up boss. So that's the whole, it's designed to keep these people top of mind and reach out to them every so often, depending on the stage they're in, right? Maybe twice a week if they're really hot to go, maybe twice a month,
Maybe
or
daily
once
if
a
they're
month.
super hot.
Well, yeah. If they need to, in like a situation we were just talking about, if they just sold their place and they have a closing in a month or two, then they really need all your attention. But yeah, so my biggest thing right now is, how often do I reach out to them based on their situation without coming across as being too pushy or naggy? And how do I do it? Do I do it via phone, text, or email? And not only that, but what should that conversation look like? Oh, I know that you're still getting your house ready to sell. Are you seeing anything that you like? When's the timeline? When you think you're going to get your place on the market? A lot of these people are out of province too, in Ontario, or they may be in Alberta. And I'm having a hard time trying to provide them with value, keep myself top of mind, and have a conversation with them that will be beneficial to them without coming across as just being too in their face and naggy about it. When I call certain people, they don't answer, or I'll call you back, or they don't get back to you. Like, I just want to make sure that I'm providing value without feeling like a pest.
Well, to start with, just don't be a pest. Have a reason that you're calling them and have relevance based on the context of your prior conversation. When you finish a conversation with somebody and you have actual communication with them, that will tell you when it's going to be time to call them again. And you'll plan on when you're going to call them again based on your conversation and the context of things. So if they're like, yeah, we've got to get our house ready for sale and we're thinking about coming on a buying trip in the summer, you're not going to call them twice a week. You're not even going to, you might call them once a month. And it might be a text and then a call. It might mix things up, but it's totally 1000% based on what's the context of your last conversation. Where are things leaving off? If you can see that they're actively looking at listings, you've got something to talk to them about. Hey, have you been seeing anything of interest online? Anything I can get you some more information about? But you don't want to be, and I read something the other day from John Sheplak that made me laugh, but it's just so real. And you don't want to be like your kids in the back seat. Hey, mommy, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Hey, are we there yet? Every fucking minute, right? That's what you sound like. Are you ready to buy yet? You ready to buy yet? You ready to buy yet? You got to have a reason to be talking to them that is relevant based on where you left off your last conversation, period.
And I give a suggestion, maybe it will help. It could be very simple. Once a week, just send them a market update email. It could be very short. The past week we had in Victoria, whatever sector they're looking at, condos, number of condos sold, this number of single homes sold, that. And it's a little something, make it nice. Don't ask them directly, where you at, like just Ron said, backseat. Just say, last week Victoria homes mark snapshot. And they will think about you all the time, once a week.
For some people, once a month is going to be sufficient. For some people, 4 times a year is going to be sufficient.
Yeah.
It's got to be based on your context of where they're at in their journey.
Exactly.
And they'll signal you and they'll trigger you, like Andy, if we're having a conversation, for example, and it's like, hey, I saw you were online, you took a look at this property a few times. Was there something in particular that you liked about it? Was there something that you didn't like about it? It did get an accepted offer the other day. How about I give you a call in a few days or when it goes unconditional or when it sells, just to give you an update. You just muted yourself.
I've had I've had lots of situations where I've had really good conversations and back and forth with my clients in the past, and even met them face to face, maybe taken them on a property tour. And then for whatever reason, their life got busy, things got changed around, and I tried to reach out to them and they just never got back to me. Right. And I just, I guess, continuing to reach out, maybe spreading out further, and just like Natalia said, and Ron, like just leave them little tidbits to let them know you're still there with like market updates and stuff, and then wait for them to reach back to you, because it's a fine line between staying in touch and them just getting like, what, this guy's too much. Obviously he doesn't know what's going on, and he doesn't get the signals that I'm not ready yet. And I've had people just been like, you know what, I'm not in the market anymore, take me off your list. And that's like, oh,
So,
but I mean,
you have to read that, right? Like, you're good at reading what people are looking for, whether they're interested, they're not interested. We're curious, but we're really not in a spot right now. So, I mean, that tells you that you want a little touch point. Maybe every 4 to 6 weeks, you send them a little bit of an update. They wouldn't be super hot, but the key is to get them into your system and make sure that you've got these little touch points set up, because they may not, by this month or next month. But, if you're providing them with that information, 12 months, 18 months from now, they're going to be calling you based on, all the touch points and the information that you've provided.
They're going to call you if the information you've been sharing has been relevant to them and you haven't been a pest in their eyes.
Yeah.
One of the real keys to successfully connecting with people and building relationships and nurturing relationships isn't just continuing to bombard them with, hey, remember me. It's about, with your engagement, asking the right questions and finding out what's going on for them. And then your responses and what you provide to them is tailored to where they're at in their journey. You really got to, and often it's a lot about just asking the tough questions, the right questions, digging in, probing. But most importantly is, I guess, just being, having an awareness and finding out what's important to them. You don't want to just boilerplate, just send, everybody something every 3 days. Every single person you interact with is going to have their own needs and wants and desires and way of being and doing. And, if you are annoying to them, they're going to shut you off. And you're going to be annoying to them if you're just blasting them with stuff, even if that's just calls and texts. If you just had a conversation and they said, yeah, we're not going to be really doing anything for a few months, and you continue to call them every third day, I mean, I'd block you.
Try to remember their personality according to personality chart. Okay, who are they? If they are D, cut it off. Be very strict and short. Like, just try to communicate with them language they appreciate.
Yeah, no, that's true. Everybody's a little different, right? And you know, you really have to read and understand and learn how to talk to who you're talking to, or how to communicate who you're communicating with, because it's very different from one person to the next.
Mhm. You know,
There's no boiler template.
There's a common theme that I keep coming across when it comes to effective communication and engaging people, and that's asking the right questions. And the person who's asking the questions are in charge of that conversation. You know, it's when they turn the question around on you that they now hold the reins. So I mean, I guess what I would like to learn more about, and I'd like to you know, find different resources on this, is what are those questions? What are those right questions? You know, there's obvious qualifying questions when you first meet an individual, which is, you know, just finding out their wants and needs as a new prospective client. But after you've had those conversations, those initial conversations, what are the right questions to engage them, to help probe deeper and to find out what's holding them back, so you can then help them with that?
It's not about what's holding them back. It's about identifying and being clear with where they're at in their journey and what their goals and desires and motivations are. And the right questions will unveil themselves based on how they answer your last question. It's not like here's a script with 37 questions that will lead you to gold in real estate. It's about listening to what they say and formulating your next question based on them and their specifics.
People engaging with you when you ask them question, but you have to be very careful what type of question and how you ask them about themselves, their family. You could start you could start talking about their dogs, kids, which is like people appreciate, and you will figure that out. Okay, don't be too direct, but ask them about their family. They will open up slowly. Okay, and yeah, that's the best way. You have to be a psychologist, basically.
And you need to record this stuff so that you remember the next time you engage with them. If it's in 3 days, you might remember, but if it's 3 months later and you've talked to another 700 people, you're not going to remember the content of the conversations. You've got to make notes for yourself that, you know, they were on their way when you tried calling, they were dropping off their kids to soccer practice, and you know their dog had a broken leg and whatever. And when you bring that back into the conversation next time, it demonstrates that you care and it helps build a connection. Those are the little things. It's not about, hey, did you see that listing I sent? Every conversation has to be, there has to be something to develop a personal connection.
Andy, I was just going to say, I have a client that's wanting to list her home. She's going through a separation. So she told me that she was going to do it like the beginning to middle of April. So I just let her be. I followed up. She's a big Instagram person. Like she's a big marketing, social media person. And I always notice like everything I post, she likes everything. Like that's kind of how she communicates. Like she loves animals. She loves children. So, you know, just learning how to read people, like you were just saying, Natalia, like just learning how to read people. And I just dropped her a line and said, hey, you know, no pressure, you know, April's here, you know, are you ready yet? And she's like, oh, we're still working. I said, no problem. So just like no pressure. Like I didn't even really talk about real estate when I messaged her. I just kind of connected with her, right? And or even just, you know, talking about the kids or the animals and stuff like that. Cause all my posts on Instagram, she loves everything with farms and kids, and she's a big family person, right? So just learn, and you've got it, Andy, like even talking to you in person, just it's learning how to read people.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very confident,
Yeah.
communicating with people in person. I think a
Right.
lot of people do. My biggest problem is trying to read people and make that connection via electronic means. I really find it to be a challenge for me personally. I don't know how they're taking me, and vice versa. I don't really know what how they are. Like, I can't see their expressions. It's really tough, to be honest, and it's an ongoing struggle.
Communicating like via text and email is often tough because often people will read into verbiage, and they'll I could type something and in my head it's kind of quirky, it's kind of funny, but you might read it as like, who's this a-hole, right? Like, it's you just never know. So I mean, it's always good to at least sort of try and establish with a phone call and have a bit of a conversation, so you understand how to communicate non-verbally. But meeting them obviously is the best way to get an introduction in and have some sort of established baseline on what the path forward is.
Yeah, I really wish that all this technology around video calling and stuff like that just really took off, and like phone calls were kind of the way of the dodo bird, because it's like, I mean, we have the technology. Well, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, if you find the reason being in this day and age when there's so much communication out there via, social media, texting, which is considered less invasive, and then email, which is the least invasive, you go up almost like a ladder, where phone calls, okay, now a bit more invasive, I could be really busy doing something, who's this guy calling me, it better be important, or even worse, like a video call, right?
We know that most people prefer not to take and won't answer phone calls now. We know that. You have to remember that texting, emailing, and phone calls really are just saved and used as a means of, having a touch and a contact, and best to help get you to an appointment where you get a chance to speak with them in person, whether that's face to face or it's on a Zoom or Messenger or WhatsApp. Your initial objective when you're meeting new people should always be to try and get that to a face-to-face conversation. Once you've established that, you've had that conversation, you've developed rapport, you've learned about them and what their needs and wants and priorities and goals are and stuff, you've got all the context you need for continued follow-up and timing and what you're going to talk about the next time you call them. But you have to have that initial connection before, otherwise you're just spamming the crap out of them trying to get that.
Yeah. And I really know how important it is, to get them on the phone. And a lot of people say,
the phone is to get them into an in-person meeting, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a bridge. All those, like, I understand what you're saying. All those they're all tools or bridges to get you to in person. And I agree 100%. So yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm trying to do more of now. Since the start of my career, it was just kind of like I've been stumbling my way through. I had a really good conversation with Jeff Williamson the other day. And he's been really successful in his first year, and he started I think just a few months before me, and I asked him, like, what's your how things are going, what's your secret here? And I told him about some of the situations I'm dealing with and how I'm just starting to be a bit more frank with my clients, and the whole shit or get off the pot thing, like Ron would say. And he said, people really appreciate you as a professional taking charge and showing them the way, because I mean, in essence, that's what they're hiring you for. You are the guy who is going to sell their place, and this is how we're going to do it, right? And be professional, but be straightforward with them. And I think that I'm really starting to learn this, that when people are kind of waffling and you've shown them like 45 properties or whatever, I've been there too. It's you get to a point where you're like, okay, now we have to do this. I mean, I know you're interested, you've spent the time, let's get it done, right? And that's what Jeff's been really good at. Yeah,
let's be real. If you're
absolutely.
showing them
Yeah.
45 properties, you're not serving them well.
It's awful.
Right.
And
There's 44 of them that there was enough information on paper beforehand to tell you that they were never going to buy that property.
Ugh.
I've often laid down some ground rules with buyers in the past. And that's, you know, based on our conversations, like, you're not going to like this place. So, I mean, if we want to come back to it down the road, we can, but it's not for you. Feel free to take a drive by.
Drive by.
The minute you drive by, you're going to be like, no. And if you don't like it outside, you don't like driving by, it doesn't matter whether you go in or not. It's not going to change that perspective.
Yeah.
And encourage them to do drive-bys. You know, it's Ron had said, you know, we're going to be, you know, facilitating showings, and sellers are going to be taking time to get things ready and get things set up for us. So, you know, do a drive-by, check out the neighbors. You know, the house may be great, but you may hate every single house that's around you.
Yeah.
And if you hate it, then you're not going to buy that house. You're going to move on to the next one. So do a drive-by on a Sunday, or a drive-by on your way to the grocery store. And don't be afraid to kind of send them on that little preliminary journey as well. I mean, I know that, you know, buying and selling is it's a tough thing for sure. And most people don't have a ton of experience doing it. And that's why, you know, our role is to kind of guide them through that process and make sure that, you know, when they get stuck, we kind of, you know, we tug the leash a little bit and say, hey, this is where we need to go. This is the next step, right?
And I like the way
I'll find out. By the way, I'll find out for you if they're having an open house, and that's when you can go see it. If we're going to schedule an appointment, you need to bring your checkbook.
Yeah.
I really like adding the value to and really showing, you know, how realtors go the extra mile, that we're more than just, you know, realtor.ca, which everyone has access to now. You know, I think it's so important that we really hit home to our clients the extra tools we have available to us, like, you know, these realtor tours that we do, these previews, right, weekly, seeing the homes before they come to market. Canvassing homes or neighborhoods that they're really interested in, but there's nothing available. And, you know, just showing them that you're willing to go that extra mile and that you have the tools to get them what they want will really, I think, add the value, you know, in their eyes to saying, yeah, you know, actually, I can't do this myself, you know. And then, you know, just outlining the process, the contracts, the subjects, the way the market is, what can go on, all those little things are what bring you know, value in your client's eyes as a professional, right? And that's what I'm really trying to focus on now, is to show them why they should use me, right?
Because you're going to
do
guide
when you
them
get a
through the entire process. Oh, sorry, Ron, go ahead.
That's what you have to do 1,000% when you get a face-to-face meeting, or a Zoom meeting, or some kind of a way to communicate with them, to share with them how you work and the value of working with you.
This is the process, and this is how I'm going to guide you from start to finish. Yeah.
It's like a checklist, and people really appreciate that, because then instead of it just being all kind of willy-nilly and chaotic, and you know, when the time's right, it'll happen. It's like, no, I mean, you know, what do you want? When do you want that? Okay, let's work to get that right for you. And you know, Ron's right. You know, like, without that face-to-face meeting, you know, you're kind of dead in the water. I mean, especially when you're getting a new prospect, they're not your client, they're your prospect, right? Like, and if they're not serious enough to take time out, and Ryan's told me this too before, if they're not serious enough and they don't have enough time to you know, give you 15 minutes or whatever to sit down and have a face-to-face meeting, then, you know, that obviously maybe they're not the client for you. Maybe they're not serious about this. Maybe they're just a bunch of looky-loos, and, you know, your time would be better spent somewhere else, right?
Well, the bottom line is that before you start working with someone, before they are your client, and as they're just your prospect, they don't become a client until you have taken the time to share with them how you work, the terms of engagement, what they can expect from you, and what you in turn expect from them. And when that's all on the table and there's mutual agreement, then they're your client.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So really quickly, Ron, do you suggest that I wait in person and talk to him tomorrow? Because you know, they're texting me right now, houses and stuff right now. I have tours with them tomorrow. I feel like it's better to talk to them in person. What do you suggest?
I'd be on the phone with them after this meeting's done and say,
Okay.
like, I'm I'm feeling a bit frustrated for you, and I'm concerned.
Okay.
What I'm concerned about is we're putting a lot of energy into finding you a home, and you're not actually in a position where you're ready to buy one yet.
Okay.
And anything that we find that's really good is going to have competition from people who have already sold.
Okay.
And you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Okay.
We're going about this backwards.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give them a call then. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. I apologize, but I've got to check out. Have
Yeah.
a great day. Have a great weekend. Hope to see some of you at our Easter egg hunt.
Happy Easter.
Happy
Thanks,
Easter.
Ron.
Yeah. Darren, I just had a quick question. Yesterday you were touching on, because there is a lot of people I talk to that are looking at properties, especially on the island for an investment,
Yeah.
either a rental or Airbnb.
Yeah.
Has anything been firmed up yet? Because I've been seeing some emails and stuff like that on Airbnbs and what's going on with legislation and stuff.
What you mean, the speculation tax or the underused housing tax or
Yes.
whatever it is? Yeah. So I don't know. I haven't gotten any clarification.
Okay.
Jason was going to touch base once. I think he was meeting a colleague today to get a little bit of clarity on that. That sort of drop down tab on the filing website for your vacancy tax declaration and stuff. I don't know if that will impact the assessment one way or another, whether it may be a little bit more of a gauge or a data collection as to how many of these properties are being utilized this way type thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's the government assessing what is happening with the short-term rental industry that has really developed. And that's obviously a development of technology, but the challenge is, from the government's perspective, one, they need to provide long-term housing. They need to make long-term housing available, and they need to make it affordable. And they also part of that, the other side of that from the government's perspective is, the hotel industry and the tourism industry, they have thousands and thousands of rooms that sit empty because people are operating, Airbnbs and that kind of stuff. And some of them are legitimate, some of them are permitted under zoning and so on and so forth, but many aren't. And so that's, I think, where a lot of, this data collection and stuff is going to end up. So, yeah.
I know it's pretty crazy, right? Like even looking at my carriage house, like it's crazy what you can charge for places right now. And that's why so many people are doing it, right?
Yeah. We honestly, we just raised the rates on our house at the lake to $3,600 a week.
It's crazy.
For peak summer. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It is crazy.
And it's booked. So
yeah, I know. Exactly. Right. Yeah. I know. Well, my girlfriend just moved into my carriage house, so I took $100 off because I'm like, hey, you're my buddy.
Don't do that. Don't.
She brings good wine. I'm okay.
That is a bad
neighbors.
Business decision.
No, but it's okay. She gives me wine all the time. I'm like, it'll offset.
Fair. Does she give you $100 a month in wine every month?
Oh, easy.
Okay, so you're good. Okay.
She's one of those types of people. I know. I was like, no, okay. But I know it's just, yeah, it's interesting looking at what's going on. And last night, the client that I was showing houses, she's looking at it for her kids to move into the home or to, rent it out. So, everybody's kind of waffling and wondering what's going on, right?
Totally. Yeah. Can everybody see okay?
Yeah.
Can you all see my screen? Okay. Now, so touching back, I know we touched on them a little bit, but time clauses, we're gonna see them. We have to deal with them on a very regular basis. And as I said, because we're bouncing back and forth between two boards, both boards have a standard form. Personally, I'm a big fan if everybody would just use the standard clauses provided in web forms through our regulator. That is consistent and available for everyone. However, Victoria has this clause form, and if you read it very carefully, so for example, Jen, when you list, or get that place listed in Port Renfrew, it's likely a buyer might come from Victoria with a Victoria realtor. And, for example, there could be this type of form in there if you're dealing with a Victoria realtor. It says more or less that this property or this offer is subject to the sale of the buyer's property. It also states that the buyer may, of course, entertain other offers. And if another offer is acceptable or accepted, at which point that accepted offer is condition free or all conditions have been waived and removed, the seller may give notice to the first buyer requiring, X amount of hours right here, if you can see, for the first buyer to remove or waive all of their conditions. If you read closely, further down, Saturdays, Sundays, and statutory holidays shall be included for the purpose of this notice. So if it's a 48-hour notice, Saturday and Sunday are your 48 hours. The second buyer's deal also has to be unconditional, which is a little bit challenging. And so this is really important, especially for people that are working up island to see. And it's important for us in Victoria to recognize it as well, is that this clause is essentially, it's allowing for the subject to sale of, which is great. The time clause, the way it's structured, is heavily in favor of buyer number one. The second buyer must spend the money and complete all of their due diligence before the seller can give notice, and buyer number two might be able to purchase the property. Just the way it's structured and worded. It also, this statement at the bottom that says Saturdays, Sundays, and statutory holidays are included, that is contradictory to almost every other term or clause in real estate when it comes to timing. Even the rescission period doesn't include Saturdays, Sundays, and statutory holidays. So that's quite specific to this form if you see it or if you use it. And it is specifically the Victoria Real Estate Board Form I Time Clause Addendum. So if you see that, please read it very carefully. In contrast, what you're likely most going to see up in the VIREB area is this one here on the right. And this one says basically that if the seller receives another bona fide acceptable offer or offer accepted, then the buyer shall have 48 hours to remove conditions, or their deal collapses and the seller moves forward with the second offer. Clear? So very different as far as the structure and what's required, or the actions of the seller are required. It also states very clearly at the bottom that Sundays and statutory holidays are excluded from the timing of the notice. So 48 hours, for example, if this notice is delivered on, say for example, it's this weekend. Say this notice gets delivered on Saturday, which is not a holiday and not excluded from this. So Sunday and Monday, because Monday is a statutory holiday, would be excluded. So a 48-hour notice would be Tuesday, Wednesday. So essentially giving them 4 days. Whereas if you're using the Victoria form, it's only 2 days. That would include both holiday days.
And the one that we have on ours, it looks more like the Victoria one, isn't it?
Well, no. So the VIREB one, you mean?
Yeah, the one that we have on transaction debt. Like, what does it look like? Is it the VIREB one? Does it look like that one?
Yeah, you would have VIREB. So you would have this one here on the right.
Okay, because we had an offer on Parkinson's, and they used the one that looked more like the Victoria one. It was Ray Little Group for the time clause.
Oh, okay, so they were probably a Victoria realtor.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
I mean, that's something to look out for too, because we do intermingle and we do cross borders a lot. Yeah. So it's really important, some of these board specific forms, not everybody up island is familiar with them. And it's almost a completely different form of practice. So
it stopped me in the tracks when I saw it. I was like, what is this? So I got Ali to explain it to me because I'd never seen it.
But if that's the Victoria form, that means that your seller can't give notice until another buyer has completely satisfied or waived all of their conditions.
Yeah.
And that actually impedes or it deters some buyers from moving forward because they may not want to spend $3,000 on an inspection and a tank scan and all that other kind of stuff for the possibility of purchasing the house. That subject period that allows them to do diligence is conducted at a point where they're secure in their purchase.
So interesting enough. So right now there was a tank found on the property. They found that they did the tank scan. So our seller is taking the tank out like April 8th or 9th for like $9,000. And then so they are still very interested, but basically right now our deal is kind of like this right now, just sitting. Yeah. So okay.
Andy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a quick question here. If you're from a certain board, like you have to use that board's form.
No.
You can use anyone in DC.
You can use a blank piece of paper if you want. Like so these standard forms, they've been developed and prepared by the Bar Association of British Columbia. So actually these forms specifically, so the Victoria form was developed by the Board of Victoria with legal guidance, and the one from VIREB was developed through the Vancouver Island Board. The standard forms that you guys get within web forms are drafted and provided for provincial use and distribution. They are there, and that's part of the service. That's part of your membership. You get access to these forms because they've been standardized, which helps you facilitate the process or the transaction. I'll be honest, you can write a legal binding contract with a piece of pen on a napkin on the dining room table if you choose. You can. It can absolutely be done. The standard forms provide us, one, with multiple layers of protection, multiple layers of disclosure, and multiple layers of items that really need to be considered and addressed. So these are a benefit of membership. That's the reason that we have them. The provincial forms are standard throughout the entire province. The ones that are specifically board distributed or board created will always be identified by a specific board.
If you're a listing agent and somebody brings you a time clause that, I mean, obviously there's one on here that favors the buyer and one that favors the seller, you know, depending on the days and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So someone brings you, like a buyer brings you one that favors them. What would be, could you actually counter and say, no, maybe if you use this form and this time clause, then we'll consider, or what?
I would just amend the time clause. Like if I'm working personally, if I'm working for a seller, and I'll explain to my seller exactly what this form means, and we'll talk about the Victoria one here specifically right now. But if I'm talking to my seller, I'm going to say, look, you know, we're getting an offer. There's a time clause. Here's the time clause. This is what it says. This says we're allowed to look at all other offers. If we find one we like and we accept it, and that buyer is willing to go through and conduct all of their due diligence, then we can give the first buyer notice to either shit or get off the pot. Mm-hmm. The challenge with that is we want the second buyer to conduct their due diligence without the security of the purchase. So every other buyer, when you write an offer with conditions, you're secure in your purchase, provided you satisfy all your conditions. Nobody can take that deal or that house or that contract out from underneath you. This time clause for Victoria actually puts a second buyer in that position. So if I'm working for a seller, one, I may be dissatisfied with the first buyer's attempts at selling their house. Perhaps they've raised the price. Perhaps their motivation has changed. Perhaps I'm not happy with their performance and I would like another option. The way this is written can't really do much unless I ask another buyer to conduct all of theirs. So from a buyer's perspective or from a seller's perspective, if you have another reasonable, acceptable offer that you want to proceed with, you should be able to accept it and serve notice. And that is essentially the difference between this one and the VIREB one. So if I see the Victoria form and I'm working for a seller, this whole clause right here, where is it here? If the seller accepts a bona fide offer to purchase the property in writing from another buyer, then the seller shall notify the first buyer of the seller's acceptance of the second offer after conditions precedent after all conditions precedent have been removed except for the subject to sale of. This little clause right here, I would strike that out completely, because I want my seller to have the ability to negotiate with another buyer and deal with another buyer, especially if the first buyer is just, you know, not performing. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The challenge here, what I would love, and so as I mentioned at the start, I've been communicating with both VIREB and VREB to figure out how we can get some consistency with these. If we as boards are going to provide these forms, then we should at least be consistent. What I love, and one of the beautiful things about the standard forms and standard clauses that we are provided through with BCREA, is that this right here, this is what you get in web forms. So if you're on your addendum or on your terms page and you go into web forms and you click clauses and you type subject to sale with time clause, you just type subject to sale, the standard subject to sale with time clause pops up, right? This is what you get. Subject to the buyer entering into a contract to sell the buyer's property at, and that contract becoming unconditional before. This condition is for the sole benefit of the buyer. The seller may, upon receipt of an unconditional offer, so you can change unconditional to acceptable. It's up to you, whoever you're working for. If you're working for a buyer, it's great if it's unconditional, because that actually strengthens your first buyer's position. If you're a seller, you may want to look at this and amend it. Notice will be delivered, so on and so forth. This little term here also is a really nice one to have. And so if the offer is acceptable and the seller accepts and proceeds, this is an added layer of protection for your buyer, which I really like. And it says that the seller agrees that if buyer number one receives or has an accepted offer on their property, the seller agrees not to invoke the time clause for a period of no less than 14 days, as long as which basically allows the first buyer to conduct or follow through with the due diligence on their sale. So because the first buyer said, I need to sell my house to buy it, now I have an offer, please, you know, allow me some time to deal with the conditions. And that's what this says. And that's just the seller saying, great, you've got an offer, carry on. We're not going to pull the rug out from underneath you.
I like that. Okay.
Is that
because they could potentially do that if you didn't have that clause in there, right?
Absolutely.
Even though
buyer
you
number
sold
one,
your place.
Yeah. Buyer number one could have a conditional offer with conditions. For example, you know, today's the 6th, say conditions aren't due off until the 15th and we got a long weekend. Buyer or seller gets another offer, wants to move forward with it, they can deliver notice even though you have an offer on your property. And so now instead of, you know, 9 days, you've got 48 hours. It's usually, you know, agreeable and acceptable to a seller. It's a reasonable term, and it's a reasonable request from a buyer to have that opportunity.
But I mean, if there was a cash buyer coming in, you know, and saying, hey, you know, we want to buy your place right now.
Yeah.
Like that would take this last clause there would take that right away from, you know, the seller, right?
Well, that's ultimately, you know, the second offer that comes in is going to be subject to the seller ceasing to be obligated. So, you know, the seller will only be able to give notice how the contract allows them to give notice. So when we're working for the seller, you know, we have to negotiate and we have to find, you know, agreeable terms to the contract. It's never going to be, it's all about me or it's all about you. It's going to be, what do we agree on? what's reasonable to expect. I, as the seller, I want to sell my place. I'm going to give you every opportunity. However, if I get another offer and you don't have an offer on your place, then boom, you're done.
Mm-hmm. But that first buyer still has the opportunity to, take that chance, basically saying, hey, well, my place has an offer on it, and I basically sold it. So now they're invoking the time clause.
They
I feel
could.
confident that, yeah.
They could waive all conditions and proceed to completion. That's risky though. The offer on their house may collapse, and then they're going to end up committed to purchasing and not be able to purchase because they haven't sold their house. I would not want to be that realtor.
No,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Not at all. No. So like in the end, I guess, really where we are is, we've got us as a brokerage. We have like 3 versions of time clauses. And to be honest, if you're asking me, I'm suggesting that we all use the standard clause that's available with everybody. Realtors in Victoria are a little bit funny. Oh, that's not how we do it here. That's not the way it's done here. And Vancouver Island, a little bit the same way. In the end, however it's written, it doesn't matter how it's written or what it's written on. It's just really important that we read the details and truly understand what it says so that we can advise our clients accordingly. There is no wrong form or wrong piece of paper to write a clause on. As long as it's incorporated and part of the contract, then nobody can tell you that's not the right way to do it. Which we see a little bit of, unfortunately, which is a little challenging, which is partially why I'm trying to work with both boards to get some consistency within our borders. So
the only hesitation I would have in using, a form like the BCREA's is just what you said there. Maybe if you're on the buyer's side, you're the buyer's agent, and then putting this time clause in your offer. Maybe another Victoria realtor who's been doing it for, I don't know, 15 years, just gone, what's this? This is no, we're just gonna flat out say no. We're so that's just the fear of missing out would be the one thing holding me back. And
and so I mean, you're gonna have to and that is all managed through communication, right? Like there's an expected level of professionalism between us. When we have realtors behaving that way, perhaps that's a time or a point where, maybe a managing broker has a call with a managing broker just to discuss little things like that quietly behind the scenes. We're not going to cause a disruption or anything like that, but that's how we can collectively as a group maybe sort of elevate our level of professionalism by understanding that I don't do it the best and everybody should do it my way. That's not something that bodes us well. And I'll be honest, if you're a buyer agent and you're working with a property listed with a newer realtor, for example, that maybe doesn't have a ton of experience, there is no reason you can't put that subject in the contract and try to get them to sign it. Most realtors are seasoned enough to understand the value or the addition of a time clause, but I've actually written contracts in the past for my buyers, subject to the unconditional sale on or before June 1st, no time clause, and it's been signed.
Okay.
And so that basically says I've got 2 months to deal with this and nobody can take it away from me. So be mindful of that also, because you may see a buyer agent give you an offer that's subject to the sale of, but not include a time clause. Depending who you're working with, and you're probably, gonna know and understand, the level of experience that you're dealing with. Usually from a buyer's perspective, it's always best to include a time clause and try and give yourself a bit of a gap. Realistically, that 24 hours, 48 hours is probably not going to be enough time. Even 96 hours is not going to be enough time to deal with all your conditions at this particular point in the game. However, a week from now, maybe 96 hours is enough. So if you can get, 72 to 96 hours as opposed to 24 to 48, then, that's just benefiting your buyer. But understand, most of the time, you will see realtors try to, well, insert time clauses if you haven't. But sometimes realtors don't always read their paperwork. So
I've had situations in the past where I put like a time clause on for my buyer for 72 hours. And then the listing agent came back to me. He's like, what, I'd like to see something more around 24 or less. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm just trying to, yeah. And I basically just said, well, I'm just trying to, provide enough time, to make sure everything happens. And he's like, well, are you new or something? Because like, this should be all taken care of beforehand. You should be ready to pull the trigger. And I often do it for 12 hours. That's what he said. I'm like,
good for you. Yeah, you know what, before you even get into those conversations, whenever another realtor phones you and says, I would like to see this, great, put it in a counter offer. We'll be happy to look at it. Yeah. That's ego. And to be honest, that's that all that is a realtor like puffing their chest and fluffing their feathers, and they want you to know how great they are. But in the end, it's not about them. It's actually about your buyer and your seller. So
yeah.
Any other thoughts? So just as a wind up, whenever you see one, be careful. You don't want your seller to be locked into a time clause that restricts them. Of course, you want your buyer to have the best opportunity possible. So depending who you're working for, you may want to have a discussion about how the particular time clause plays out for their particular benefit or restriction. So just make sure, there's numerous variations of them out there, unfortunately. As I said, if we would all use the same one, that would be much better. But we don't. So we have to just make sure we know exactly which one we're dealing with when we're talking with our particular clients.
That's great.
Anybody, anything else? I think, yeah, it's 10 after 10. That's all I had on time clauses. We can talk about them over and over again for hours and still be confused.
That's great. I appreciate it. Cause like I said, I just had this happen. And I was like, oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
And then maybe next Thursday, it would be great. I know Mark brought up the really trusted.
Andy did, yeah.
Yeah, or Andy did, yeah. But it'd be great to go through that a little bit more too, because I'm using it a lot more. It's a great app.
Yeah.
So
I can look into that. I'll be honest with you. I haven't used it in quite some time. So I might be a little rusty and a little dusty on it. But if there's a particular task or a particular something, let me know what it is, and I can get you some resources on that as well.
Okay,
for sure.
That's great.
Yeah. Hey, Darren, I don't know if you have any time to jump on a quick Zoom with me after this or not, but I mean, I tried to go through the really trusted thing just around derps yesterday with Ron after a little conversation in a meeting. And we, I said that, it wasn't populating. It would show the first offer for one derp, and then I would do a counter offer with the same party and the same address. And then it would erase the first column and it would just show it in the counter offer column. So I don't know. He's like, well, I think you're doing something wrong. I'm like, you're sitting right here with me.
So what does the final document look like?
Well, this is it. I mean, we looked at it.
So start a process with me. Add me to it, and we'll go through, and we'll do 2 or 3 counter offers back and forth, and
we'll try to.
We'll see what the finalized document looks like.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll do a test run for sure. Yeah. Okay, everybody. if there's nothing else to add, we will let you all go. I'll wind this up. If you want to review, obviously, our time clause discussion, we'll post this one online as we do with all of them. Feel free to check them out. And we will see you all tomorrow sometime after I make my way back to Victoria.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Happy
everyone.
Easter, everyone.
Oh yeah, happy Easter too.
Yeah.